Hello, and thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is David Johnson, and as an analyst at Forrester, my goal is to help companies create places where people will choose to do their best work to win, serve, and retain customers. So that means I study the relationship between customer experience and employee experience, which for us is one part technology and one part organizational psychology, specifically the psychology of high performance. And what I'm going to share with you today is something I don't think you've heard anywhere else, and it's also the result of a study that Forrester did on behalf of Dell. And while it was a paid study, we applied the same rigorous, independent methodologies that we use for any of our research. And we learned a lot, and I'm excited to share with you our findings from the study today. Customer experience research in general is something that Forrester has been doing for almost a decade, and we have an excellent understanding from all of our data of how customer experience relates to financial performance of a company, and also what drives customer experience for organizations all over the world. And from this research, we've learned that one of the things that sets customer experience leaders apart from the rest is how they view the employee experience as a core part of their strategy. Companies who consistently outperform in our customer experience index also typically place a much higher priority on the employee experience because they understand the relationship between those two things, that you don't get one without the other specifically. And supporting our research, because employee experience is something that is also being studied by academic researchers all over the world. We reach out to those researchers and include what we learn in our research and in our studies. And so many of them are people who study behavior and motivation in the workplace extensively. And one of the most important findings comes from Dr. Teresa Amabile at the Harvard Business School. What she discovered is that conventional wisdom about what makes people happy at work or what creates a positive employee experience is precisely wrong. In survey after survey, managers across hundreds of organizations rank things like recognition for work well done, more money or pay for performance, or having important work, or having good coworkers and good customers as the most important things. But her research proved that they're not the most important things. All those things are important. It's not to say that they're not, but what's most important is what consistently was ranked at the end or at the bottom in her surveys, and that's making progress every day toward work that they know is important. In other words, getting things done is the most important thing and correlates the most with employee satisfaction and happiness. So when we have a productive day at work, and most of us can probably relate to this, we're the most satisfied and we feel the best about ourselves and our job. So that is the essence of a positive employee experience. And the reason why we needed this finding, or we want to communicate this finding, is to be able to invest in the things that will create a positive employee experience for your company, you have to know what that looks like and where it comes from. It's the most important thing, so you know what to shoot for, right? So that was a key finding from our research that outside of the study with Dell, that's a key finding for you to be aware of. And also, when we look at the customer experience research and employee experience research in the academic world, customer experience side, there are three dimensions that stand out and matter the most. First of all, it is, did the customer get done what they set out to do? Right? Was the interaction effective? And were they able to do it without difficulty? Was it easy for them to do? Or was it frustrating? And did they feel good about the experience afterward? Were they made to feel valued, or were they made to feel irrelevant or stupid or others that are less desirable? And of these three, the emotion is the most important. It has the highest correlation with a positive customer experience. How we feel is something that's when we interact with somebody or a company, it leaves a very strong mark on us psychologically, particularly if that interaction is negative. On the employee experience side, now these don't correlate necessarily one-to-one. They're just the three dimensions that matter the most on employee experience, a positive employee experience. The first is productivity. I mentioned this with Dr. Amabile's work, but that they can get their work done, that they can be fully productive. And also also, number two, is that they feel like their company does a good job of facilitating their progress, does a better job of doing that than standing in their way. This is why nobody likes to work in a really overly bureaucratic organization, for example. And then also that they feel a sense of connection with their work, their colleagues, and a sense of purpose overall. When those things come together, it correlates highly with a positive employee experience. And other academic studies really hammer this home in terms of the links between employee experience and customer experience. Now, I mentioned earlier that companies who score the highest in our customer experience index also have the highest revenue growth. So they have a strong financial performance. But also other studies, academic studies have shown, and this is one that was published in 2013. It was 300,000 data points over multiple years, a very good study that was also corroborated by other studies, showed that companies whose employees are having a positive experience, right, that exhibit all the signs of being healthy and emotionally well and so on, enjoy overall about 81% higher customer satisfaction, about half the employee turnover. And for each standard deviation increase in employee turnover, it correlates with about a 40% drop in productivity and about a 28% drop in profit. And these are non-trivial results, so this is significant. Employee experience, positive employee experience, correlates to positive business outcomes just as a positive customer experience does. So that's a key insight to take with you. It's also important to understand what high performance looks like. So especially in knowledge work, with so much of the work being done in companies now being really knowledge work driven, it's critical to know what high performance looks like and where it comes from. And a psychologist named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi was the first to write about this almost 40 years ago. And since that time, several other researchers and studies have proven his findings, so they're no longer in dispute. But this is a state of being completely absorbed in what you're doing, right? People who are able to direct their attention well and do it consistently and stay focused on the most important work that they have to do, on average are about 127% more productive than those who cannot do that as well. So, you know, high performance is the ability to self-regulate your attention and stay focused, and a technology environment that helps employees stay focused by not distracting them, not interrupting them, and also putting the information that they need at their fingertips, makes it easy for them to stay in flow, is really important. So older technology that doesn't work as well, things like that can interrupt flow, sometimes for long periods of time. Poor security strategy and policy can interrupt flow. But it's important to understand where this comes from. Flow also requires autonomy, that employees will have a say in how their work gets done. And I correlate this closely with things like bring your own device initiatives, or employee self-service for applications, or choose your own device initiatives. The important thing is that they don't feel locked into just having one path, right? That they're able to have some say in the devices that they use and also the applications that they use, where they're going to work, for example, and where, you know, how they allocate their time. They also want to continue to improve themselves and know that they're getting better at their jobs over time. And they also want to know that their work is important and that they feel like they belong to part of a group. And when these things come together, it sets all the conditions for flow. But technology is more critical than ever in supporting or hindering flow. And what we're looking at, what we look at when we look at our survey data on what employees inside of companies are saying they do, and this is a global survey, and we've broken out the Asia-Pacific portion of that survey result here. What you're looking at is adaptive behavior. If we understand and agree that getting things done is what makes employees happy, you can see pretty quickly when you look through that lens of productivity of what's happening when we look at the data. So, for example, 43% of employees in Asia-Pac said that their primary work laptop was paid for out of their own pocket. And that's up 4% from 2015. And that was also up from 2014 as well. So it's going up every year. And the reason why is that they prefer owning and controlling their own work computer. And that's significant as well. What they're saying is look, I need enough control over this computer to ensure that I can get done what I need to do and that nothing is going to get in my way of doing that. So again, it's adaptive behavior. And also when we look at the U.S., for example, it's about 30%. If I look at India specifically, it's about 53%. So it correlates very well with countries where devices are either older or outdated, typically, or are locked down and there's less freedom of choice, that's when you're going to see the highest rate of employee-owned devices, and in this case, employee-owned laptops. So again, it's adaptive behavior. What's unfortunate, though, is when we look at the data of what business leaders are saying about customer experience and employee experience, they all agree that improving customer experience is their #1 priority. But what they don't see is that better addressing the needs of employees is at least as important, if not more so. And so only about half of those that say that customer experience is important say that addressing employee needs is important. We'd like to see that gap close, but there are bright spots within the data as well. So some countries in the Asia-Pacific and Japan region place a higher priority here overall on employee experience, so that's significant. But what it means is that there's an opportunity. If you want to improve customer experience overall, increasing the priority on meeting employee needs, particularly with technology, is a great path to get there. It'll give you good bang for the buck. And we also looked at some of the causal and related factors here that correlate well. It's good that every company, 74% of companies, say that they have a well-defined PC lifecycle management strategy so that they know how to procure them, manage them, and apply policies and retire them and so on. But what they don't have is a well-defined employee computing strategy that's linked to business outcomes. So that means they're turning the crank, right? They're just providing the machines and so on, but they're not really linking their overall strategy to employee and business outcomes. And that's significant. There's room for them to improve in this area. And in terms of better addressing employee needs and what steps they could take in understanding employee needs, most of them are using pretty primitive methods, so about half are using periodic audits. And that's not a very effective means of doing that. Only about 20% are using any kind of quantitative methods, such as surveys, either dedicated or as part of their overall organizational strategy. So if you're looking for ideas for ways to improve employee experience, it starts with a better understanding of employee needs. And there are a few ways to do that. Some of the ways that we do this as a firm, and also I believe Dell offers capabilities here for understanding employee needs as well. They're very similar. But the idea here is that starting with a satisfaction survey should be the baseline. So if you have a good understanding of what people are happy with and what they're not happy with, and you're looking at the right things, it can tell you what's working, but really not that much else, and what isn't working, and really not that much else. To get a more forward-looking view means going after an understanding of what employees need and what their preferences are, how they're working, what their habits are, and so on. And it can provide you a good fact basis to help develop personas, and you can use those personas for better planning and better strategy. And then third, at the highest level, and this is something that's pretty uncommon, but it's a great opportunity, is looking at factors surrounding employee engagement and flow. Some companies do deploy employee engagement surveys today. They're not doing a very good job typically at looking at technology-related factors because a lot of those surveys are old in the methodologies that they use. So it's important to include the technology factors to look for things like well-being and employee engagement with technology-related factors overall. Okay? But at the least, if you can get beyond get to a satisfaction survey and then move into a true needs assessment at the second level, it can give you a couple of things. And typically what we find in the data here is that there are two dimensions that matter more than anything else, and that is the number of applications that somebody uses and the number of locations from which they work. Those things, more than anything else, govern the kind of device choices that they need, but also how much freedom and flexibility they need to have to choose applications to support where they work and how they work best. So typically we end up with somewhere between 4 and 6 personas for a very large organization. Anything more than that's too hard to manage, and you'll get most of what you need in terms of delivery model and devices and everything else from those dimensions. And there's some good news in the data as well. Is that some firms are doing the right things. When we ask them, which of the following statements do you agree would help you attract and retain talent in your organization, for example, they get it. More freedom of choice for devices, staying up to date with the latest device technology, providing a more collaborative work environment. Those are all good things, and it's good to see them prioritized above things like health insurance, increasing perks like health insurance, travel compensation, and so on. Not that those things aren't important, but for retention, these factors, technology-related factors, matter more now. So you can no longer separate technology strategy from people strategy in companies. And so the recommendations that we make are, first of all, make sure that employee productivity and experience is a top organizational priority, at least as important as improving customer experience, if not more so. And to help change the culture in that direction, one of the ways to do that is developing a rigorous and repeatable approach to regularly assessing employee technology needs. And you might remember that I mentioned that a satisfaction survey is the base level, a formal needs assessment is an even better approach, and then finally looking at employee engagement is also another higher level approach to consider. And with the results of what you find, you can use that to build a better business case with soft benefits and other things that are normally difficult to quantify. And that gives you a basis for creating change and bringing things up the hierarchy. To find out more about what we learned in the study, you can connect with your Dell contact for a copy of the study. And I'm also always happy to answer questions, and you can reach me here at Forrester. Thank you for your time and attention, and I hope the time was well spent.